If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey y'all, we are back talking about myths, this time slaying the supplement myths with our guest, Dr. Chaney.
Hello, Dr. Chaney. This is Eleanor.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you back with us. Dr. Chaney is one of our neighbors here in North Carolina, and he's an award-winning professor who taught human metabolism and nutrition to medical students at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for 40 years, so this is a depth of experience, y'all. He is an internationally recognized scientist who's published over 100 research studies and reviews in peer-reviewed scientific journals, so he has a lot of credibility in understanding how to interpret the scientific literature, and we're so happy to have you with us today to talk about this whole controversy of supplements. Should I take a supplement or not? You know, what's that about? Is it good and what's bad? And can fruits and vegetables really be put in a capsule? And is enhanced water really good for you? I mean, this book has got some good topics in it.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things that I think you have in common with one of our other authors, I believe his name is Robert Davis. He's a health skeptic and has written some books out in California. He's not one of our North Carolina friends, but the idea of being skeptical about all this information, and then also the idea of the power of our mind and the placebo effect. And if somebody tells you something and you believe it, it's going to influence the results you might experience. So I would like to start off with maybe let you speak to that a little bit about what is a placebo.
So yes, I it's interesting. I just talk about placebo, and one time before I was about to give a talk, my wife said, I'm not sure everybody knows what a placebo
Exactly.
is.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this is where you're doing what's called a double-blind clinical study, and you give one person the active pill, whatever it is, and the other one you give a sugar pill, or if it's maybe an omega fish oil or something like that, you give another type of pill with another type of oil.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to give something that has absolutely no effect. It's just so. And the thing is, if we believe that we're going to feel better, we often do. And for for some things, you're probably not going to change your cholesterol level from your mind. But in terms of feeling, in terms of pain, in terms of things like that,
and maybe the behaviors
mind is powerful.
The behaviors that you're willing to do, I think, the mind will influence that. Like if the doctor gives you a pill and you take it, and you believe in the doctor, then you're going to take the pill because he told you to, or she, in these words.
Right.
Or if they tell you to exercise, you may or may not, because frequently they don't tell you to exercise.
Well, that actually, this is something I know you weren't planning to ask me, but that actually gets around to the whole idea of DNA testing.
Oh, let's do that.
The best thing about DNA testing is that people are more likely to do what it says than even if their doctor told them that they should diet or they should eat this food or whatever. If the DNA tests show that they should, they're more likely to do it.
They might believe that that's it. Well, one of the things that you do say in both of your books is that we are individuals. And when you look at scientific reports, you have a population of individuals, but you're looking at an average of those, and no one is really average, right?
Right. I called that the Lake Wobegon effect. You remember Garrison Keillor's
I do, but other people might not.
Prairie Home Companion?
And Kristen doesn't
know.
The
Lake Wobegon stories always started with where all the children are above average.
Yeah, Kristen's too young for that one. Oh. Well, what about the lies? So you separate the book into the lies from the food supplement industry, and then you take on the naysayers of, like people that say don't take supplements. And then you try to balance all that conversation out in this book. And so those of us that are struggling with whether we should or should not take a supplement, and do we do it with or without medical counsel, this is a really good book to help us process that whole decision tree that we find ourselves confronted with. And you have a graphic that I like very much that talks about the lifestyle, that includes poor diet and why would you want to take a supplement? When is it a good idea? Do you want to tell us a little bit the design for healthy living graph that you've come up with?
Yeah, so and that's something called a Venn diagram, which is just a fancy name, but it's circles.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 4 interlaced circles there. And one of them is poor diet. And I think the thing is, what we've always been told, well, our diets aren't good, so we should probably take supplements. In most cases, poor diet alone may not mean that you need a particular supplement. You have to look at the other circles. So one is increased need. There's some increased needs we recognize very easily. We know that if you're pregnant or lactating, you need more calcium, you need more iron, you need more certain supplements, certain vitamins. So we recognize those increased needs. We have other increased needs as we get older, but there's the increased needs. So again, now if you've got poor diet and increased needs for a certain nutrient overlapping, you're starting to get in the region where you're pretty sure a supplement's going to make a difference. And then there is genetic predisposition. Now that's something that most of us know nothing about. Sometimes DNA testing can help us with that. There are a few cases in which we know a particular genetic defect increases our need for certain vitamins. So, but most cases people have no idea. But that can also increase your need for supplementation, particularly for those vitamins, or sometimes an increased risk of disease, and then that gets us to diseases. That's the other circle. If you have a disease, that often increases your need for certain vitamins. It's fascinating because if you go to myths or the naysayers, one of the things I call it a straw man, and it's the idea that supplementation with nutrient X, maybe it's vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin D, whatever it is, omega-3s, but supplementation, that's going to help every single person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you design clinical studies that way, and it says, nope, doesn't help everybody, doesn't work. But if you look at the people who are at high risk of disease, so heart disease, for example, you look at people who are at high risk of heart disease, guess what? Omega-3s make a difference. They reduce their risk. So, it's the disease risk does affect whether or not supplementation is important.
I think that's
my other point was, poor diet we can pretty much figure out on our own. Most people know they don't eat if they don't eat right. The other things most of us have no idea about. And one of the things I mentioned is for many people, the first symptom of heart disease is sudden death.
Right. Yeah.
So we don't always know about these other things. So I think supplementation, we need to take yes, that diagram is useful, but 3 of those circles are typically hidden from us.
So the idea of prevention is one of my favorite topics when we talk about strategies for preventing disease and promoting health. And you talk about primary and secondary prevention strategies, and I think we can go into that a little bit, but I think that argues strongly for maybe people involving a nutritionist in their team of healthcare providers, because they can they can help you determine your risk factors if you're not aware of them, and deficiencies that may be there or not in your lifestyle as well as your eating behaviors. Kristen, do you want to speak to that at all?
I was about to say, I know one if anyone's looking.
Well, yeah, and in your books, Dr. Chaney, you speak, and earlier you mentioned that doctors don't really have the time to sit down and analyze what your lifestyle is doing, or they may not be well versed on supplementation or the best
or
nutrition habits.
Or how to read the scientific literature.
And that's why dietitians exist, because that's our job, to take that time and help you really analyze what you're doing and take the evidence and put that into practice
and
with
also
your everyday steps.
That psychological counseling that goes, the support network and things that help people make transition to new behavior change. What about, I turn on my TV and
I would just add something here, and Kristen, you can chime in on this.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things you said are great, but dietitians in general are trained that with sort of the mindset that everything can be done with food, by changing people's diets, and they're sort of trained trained against using supplements. And I understand where that's coming from. I think the difficult thing is, even with a dietitian working with people, sometimes they don't do what you tell them you want them to do. And that's supplementation make a difference. But Kristen, you can chime in with that. I just say I would ask the dietitian you're working with what their view is on supplementation. Is it something they always avoid? Is it something they recommend when appropriate? How do they view it?
Yeah, I agree. I think in school, you did learn about some supplements, but the overall theme was you can't necessarily trust supplements. They're not as regulated, and you do want food first. I don't think we were trained against supplements, but I do think there is a lot of room for more education in the dietetics field about supplementation. Absolutely.
And I would definitely agree, food first. And I just wish more people would take that to heart. And I wish there weren't so much misinformation out there about what foods are healthy.
And I'll just chime in on cooking at home, slow food. There's such a trend to eat prepackaged processed food for convenience because of the lifestyles the Americans are leading. And we do talk about in both of your books, Slaying the Food Myths and the Supplement Myths, about the standard American diet. And as you said, just about anything's better than that. But if we can move to the turning on the TV and what people are barraged with when they watch television and their programming is interrupted by these marketing campaigns to say, oh, I feel so much better because I'm eating my vegetables and I only take these pills. I have fruits and vegetables in a tablet. Your book sort of says, no.
Yeah, can I share quickly, and then we'll discuss the tips that you give on picking out a supplement or, helping to determine. So tip number 1 is, where'd it go? Good product design matters. So knowing the label and the design, look for balance. You have some interesting information in here on holistic supplementation versus just 1 or 2 ingredients. And then don't fall for buzzwords that you hear on the news. Don't fall for scare tactics, right? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, or if it's too crazy. And then demand proof. And I really appreciated this part of the book and the interesting case studies or whatever you had of people who were believing that this product was great because they had this paper. But this paper was actually not in a peer-reviewed publication. It was in something that they paid to have it in there
advertising
to look
journal.
like it was a legit study. So I think those are 6 great tips. And, get the book because you can go into it in more detail. But that's kind of, I think, what you were
absolutely
talking about, right?
Oh, yeah. And I was going to ask Dr. Chaney about the vegetables in a pill, whole food in a pill.
Well, that's fascinating. We have an example that's just bombarding the airwaves recently. Won't go into any names, but I think you'll know who, they say that get 15 fruits and vegetables and 6 capsules. Now,
And you feel
you
better.
think about that for a minute. If you just were to look at the amount of material take one apple, and they have these beautiful graphics where they take these fruits and vegetables, they cut them up, they desiccate them into a powder, and they're telling you to put all that powder from those 15 fruits or vegetables in these 6 capsules. Well, the powder from one apple would take, and I don't remember the exact number, but I think about 28 capsules. It's one apple, one of the 15 ingredients in there. You take broccoli, that was one of the others. You take that to a powder. I think it was about 15 or 18 or something like that. Again, so you start to say, well, this really doesn't make sense. But then you also can look at the label. An apple gives you, I think, 15% of your vitamin C for the day. 50% of your daily value for vitamin C. Broccoli gives you a significant amount of vitamin K. You look at the label, the label has 0 amount of any nutrient. And that's because for them to put it on the label, they've got to have at least 2% of that nutrient. So obviously you're not getting nutrition from the apple, the nutrition from the broccoli, the nutrition from the other fruits and vegetables. If you were, you would see those nutrients from those fruits and vegetables listed on the label.
Can you talk a little bit about the regulating industry? Because you mentioned the FTC, the FDA, USDA, and some of the supplements that hit the market that were dangerous and actually have killed some people. I don't think the general public has a concept of if the FDA says this or that, what it means. What are those agencies, and what can we expect from them?
Well, FTC regulates advertising, the way you can advertise a supplement. And interestingly enough, the standards vary. And for whatever reason, the standards are much lower for what you can say on television, which is why some of the things you see on television are a little bit out there.
Wow.
But they are they're much tighter on social media and what you can say in print. So that regulation is there. The FDA regulates the claims that you can make.
Is that just on drugs?
Oh, that's on foods as well. That's on supplements
food
as well.
and drugs, right?
Yeah, food and drugs.
So that
And
are supplements
that
drugs?
Supplements.
Okay, they're food. Food supplements are considered food?
Supplements are considered foods,
Okay.
but again, you have to, you start making claims that they cure disease or prevent disease. The FDA says, no, you can't do that. You may have seen that some of these little things that are put in a box that are label claims that the FDA has approved, which are sort of very generic, like calcium is good for bone health. That's about as strong as the FDA would let you say, but there are a few claims like that. If you were to say, well, my calcium supplement reverses osteoporosis, the FDA would slap you down. Now, the FDA also regulates dangerous food supplements. And what happens is, in dangerous drugs, dangerous food supplements, they have a collecting system. So if somebody suffers an adverse event, their doctor or the individual can report it to the FDA.
Okay.
And so the FDA collects those, and once they collect enough of those, they will investigate the ingredients that are in that drug or that supplement, and they will come down and try and get it off the market.
Yeah, well, that story about DMAA, I remember when that one was going on, and it was a very sad story about they didn't get it off the shelves, and products that had that ingredient in it. And the idea that we can trust things that are on the shelf, I think, is something that consumers do need to have some respect and curiosity about.
Right, because you mentioned some analysis of certain things that were on the shelf that had nothing in it that it claimed it had in it.
Right.
So you might be spending your money on nothing.
And you look at the cost of a high-quality supplement according to the criteria that you said would be useful in selecting supplements, and those may cost a little bit more than some of these supplements that are on the shelf. And, consumers that are budget conscious may be buying things that either have no effect or could have things in them that are damaging, according to what I think you said in your book.
And I think companies are recognizing that we want quality controls, and they say they do quality controls.
Like USP.
Right.
And certified
but
organic. Certified organic.
How do we really know if they're doing stringent quality control? Dr.
And
Chaney?
the answer is we really don't, because
trust. You got to trust me.
Where we trust the FDA. So let me come back to the whole idea of the FDA. So the FDA has multiple responsibilities. One is to get dangerous drugs and supplements off the market. The second is to regulate claims that are misleading and tell people they can't make those claims. And the third is to inspect manufacturing facilities and make sure that they're up to snuff, that what comes through has what's on the label and what doesn't have contaminants, is not adulterated, as we might say.
Can they regulate foreign products? Like manufactured in China?
No, they don't directly regulate foreign products.
Okay.
They tend to require foreign countries to do some of that, but we're still based on the faith in the foreign countries. But so the problem is the FDA is severely understaffed. Mm-hmm. They should have taken all of those people that they were putting in the IRS and put them in the FDA, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. Don't want to get into politics here.
Not allowed.
But they're severely understaffed. So their top priority is get dangerous drugs and supplements off the market. They don't often get, and they do a pretty good job of that. But the thing we have to understand is there's a legal process here. If a company disputes it, then they can take them to court. It may be 5 years or more before the FDA can get that product taken off the market. And you talk about the DMAA, I mean, that's what I call a scandal.
Yes.
When the FDA said, we think you should take this off the market. They tapped them lightly on the wrist.
Oh, by the way, that was an amphetamine-like substance that was giving young men strokes and things that they wouldn't necessarily experience, if you're not familiar with that controversy.
Yeah. So, gave a light tap on the shoulder. They kind of ignored it. Then the FDA came, months later, after more people had died, the FDA came down and said, okay, you got to take this off the market. So the manufacturer immediately stopped making it. They came out later with a different analog that basically had the same thing. The FDA had to come back and tell them to take that off the market, but that's another story. The company that sold it said, okay, well, we'll take it off the market as soon as our stock, as soon as we stock out, as soon as we use up our inventory. The FDA actually had to raid their warehouses to get it off the market.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
No. Well, the other thing that you didn't talk about in here is some people go to herbalists to get their supplements, and the herbalist will make it customized for them. And I have some reservations on that about quality control, because we know active substances in herbal ingredients are influenced by the growing conditions. And so I think it's interesting. Do you have any comment about that at all?
I'm not as familiar with that. I do know that there are pharmacies that do that. I would hope that they would use, they would be very careful about quality controls of the ingredients that they use. But I can't say that for sure.
Okay. Well, we're coming up to your time break. You have another meeting. Is there? We have time for a little bit more discussion. Is there something else that you'd like to have us focus on to help people kind go grab your book?
Well, I think you've probably given. I think the things we've covered they're just a smattering, but they give you an idea of what's in the book. I've tried to be as comprehensive as I could in a way that wasn't overwhelming.
And you give us really good summaries at the end of your chapters, which I think, and you do this on your blog too, you call it the bottom line. And even at the end of the book, you give us a bottom line. So the style of writing in this book is really easy to read. As I said, he's written it for general people who may not have PhDs and 40 years of experience in metabolic research and creating cancer drugs. And we are so grateful for the contribution you have made to all of our better beings. I'm Eleanor Russell at 360healthforyou.com, and I like to help people make healthy happen. We do that with lifestyle and with some really high-quality products. Dr. Chaney, do you want to tell us about your resources?
I have a website called chaneyhealth.com. You go there, you click on Health Tips, and you can subscribe to my Health Tips from a Professor. It's a weekly blog that, every week a different topic. This week it is magnesium good for your heart. And you can also search. There's a search box there. You can put search terms. If you have something that's of interest to you, you might find a previous article I've written. I also have a resource tab on there where you can find my books and you can find videos.
Thank you, Dr. Chaney, for having such a great variety of resources and being that voice of reason and helping us all become our own scientists and just understanding the world of science that can be really confusing for most. And especially when the noise is so loud with all of the hype, it's just really nice to have someone like you on the internet that people can go to for good advice. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It was great to be with you.
And who are you, Kristen?
And I'm Kristen Norton, a registered dietitian of Well Balanced Nutrition. Find us at wellbalancednutrition.com.
And I hope that we will continue these conversations and continue our reading. And maybe Dr. Chaney will visit us again, because we've read several books that I would like to get his opinion on at some point, like The Food Fix and the Health Skeptic that we mentioned earlier.
I have so many notes that we didn't even get to, Dr. Chaney. So, yes, I would love to have another conversation.
Thank you again. And happy reading, everybody.
And opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.